Welcome back to Ultimate Betrayal, where we share the most jaw-dropping stories of backstabbing, deception, and the kind of revenge that reshapes entire lives. Today's story is so intense, so emotionally devastating, and ultimately so satisfying that you might need to pause halfway through just to process what you're hearing. We're talking about the kind of betrayal that destroys families, ruins careers, and leaves people questioning everything they thought they knew about the people closest to them. Imagine discovering that your business partner of 15 years, your best friend since college, your children's godfather, the man you trusted with your life savings and your company's future, has been systematically stealing from you while sleeping with your wife and planning to destroy everything you've built. What would you do when you realize that the two people you loved most in the world have been conspiring against you for years? Well, buckle up, because this story of revenge is so methodical, so perfectly executed, and so completely devastating that it will restore your faith in the idea that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe delivers exactly the justice that people deserve. Our story unfolds in the affluent suburbs of Denver, Colorado, where successful entrepreneurs live in million-dollar homes and business deals are sealed with handshakes and trust that goes back decades. This is where reputation matters more than money, and where a man's word is supposed to be his bond. Meet Michael Harrison, a 42-year-old software architect who built a thriving cybersecurity company from nothing. Michael was the kind of man who believed in loyalty, hard work, and treating people fairly. He had grown up middle class, worked his way through college, and built his fortune through intelligence, determination, and an almost naive belief that good people would always do the right thing. Michael was methodical, patient, and had an analytical mind that could solve the most complex technical problems, qualities that would prove crucial when he needed to plan the most important project of his life. Then there's David Sterling, Michael's business partner and former college roommate, who had been like a brother to Michael for over 20 years. David was charming, charismatic, and had a gift for sales and marketing that perfectly complemented Michael's technical expertise. At 41, David lived in a mansion, drove luxury cars, and projected an image of success that made clients trust him immediately. What Michael didn't know was that David's charm masked a sociopathic personality that saw other people as tools to be used and discarded. The third player in this devastating drama is Sarah Harrison, Michael's wife of 16 years and the mother of their two children, Emma, 14, and Jake, 12. Sarah had been Michael's college sweetheart, a beautiful and intelligent woman who had supported Michael's entrepreneurial dreams even when it meant years of financial struggle. At 39, Sarah seemed to have everything: a loving husband, beautiful children, financial security, and a prominent position in Denver's social circles. But appearances can be deceiving, and Sarah harbored resentments and desires that would ultimately destroy her family. Michael and David had founded Sentinel Cybersecurity Solutions 15 years earlier with a $50,000 loan and a shared dream of building something meaningful. Their partnership had been perfect. Michael handled the technical development and innovation while David managed sales, marketing, and client relationships. By 2023, Sentinel was worth over $12 million, with contracts protecting major corporations from cyber threats and a reputation as one of Colorado's most innovative tech companies. Their success had allowed both families to live well. Michael and Sarah owned a beautiful 6,000-square-foot home in Cherry Hills Village, one of Denver's most exclusive neighborhoods. Their children attended private schools, the family took luxury vacations, and Michael had achieved the American dream through hard work and innovation. The partnership with David seemed unshakable. They had weathered economic downturns, competitive pressures, and the normal stresses of running a growing business. David was Emma and Jake's godfather, a regular at family dinners, and someone Michael trusted completely with both business and personal matters. Sarah seemed equally committed to their life together. She had given up her own career as a marketing executive to support Michael's business and raise their children. She was active in school committees, charity organizations, and the kind of social circles that helped Michael's business networking. From the outside, the Harrisons appeared to have the perfect marriage and the perfect life. The first crack in Michael's perfect world came in March 2023, when he noticed unusual patterns in the company's financial statements. As the technical founder, Michael usually left the financial management to David and their accountant, but a client's question about billing had prompted him to review some accounts personally. What he found didn't make immediate sense. There were consulting fees paid to companies Michael had never heard of, expense reimbursements for trips that David claimed were client meetings but that didn't correspond to any client contracts Michael knew about, and equipment purchases that never seemed to arrive at their offices. Michael's analytical mind kicked into gear. He began quietly reviewing financial records, cross-referencing expenses with client contracts, and tracking down the details of transactions that seemed suspicious. What he discovered over the next several weeks painted a picture of systematic embezzlement that had been going on for at least 3 years. David had been creating fake consulting companies, billing Sentinel for non-existent services, and pocketing the payments. He had been inflating expense reports, claiming reimbursements for personal trips and purchases, and even billing the company for improvements to his personal home by disguising them as office renovations. The total amount stolen was staggering. Over $2.3 million over 3 years. David had been so confident in Michael's trust and so skilled at manipulating the books that he had become increasingly bold in his theft. But financial betrayal was only the beginning of Michael's nightmare. As he investigated David's fraudulent activities, he began noticing other patterns that made his blood run cold. David's client meetings often coincided with times when Sarah claimed to be at charity events or shopping with friends. His expensive trips that were supposedly for business included luxury resorts and romantic destinations that seemed inappropriate for corporate meetings. Michael's suspicions led him to hire a private investigator, not because he wanted to spy on his wife and best friend, but because he needed to understand the full scope of David's deception and protect his business from further damage. The investigator's report, delivered on a rainy Tuesday evening in April, shattered Michael's world completely. Sarah and David had been having an affair for over 2 years. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel receipts, photographs, credit card records showing romantic dinners and weekend getaways, and even recordings of phone conversations discussing their relationship and their plans for the future. But the betrayal went deeper than adultery and embezzlement. The investigator had uncovered evidence that Sarah and David were planning to destroy Michael completely. They had been working together to position themselves to take over Sentinel cybersecurity, planning to force Michael out of his own company by claiming he was mentally unstable and had been making erratic business decisions. Their plan was diabolical in its completeness. David would use his embezzlement to create artificial financial crises that he would blame on Michael's poor management. Sarah would support claims that Michael was suffering from stress-related mental health issues that made him unfit to run the company. Together, they would petition the board and investors to remove Michael as CEO and install David as the sole leader of the company Michael had built. The worst part was discovering that they had already begun executing their plan. David had been sharing confidential company information with competitors, creating deliberate problems with client accounts, and spreading rumors about Michael's mental health to business associates and investors. Sarah, meanwhile, had been documenting incidents of Michael's supposed erratic behavior, mostly his natural reactions to the stress that David's sabotage was causing. She had been visiting a therapist and building a case for claiming that Michael was an unfit father who needed professional help, laying the groundwork for a divorce that would give her custody of the children and a significant portion of Michael's assets. The investigator's final revelation was the most devastating. Sarah and David were planning to frame Michael for the embezzlement. David had been creating false evidence suggesting that Michael was the one stealing from the company, planning to present this evidence to law enforcement and business partners simultaneously with their claims about his mental instability. Michael spent that night sitting in his home office, surrounded by evidence of the most comprehensive betrayal he could have imagined. The two people he loved and trusted most in the world had been systematically destroying him while planning to steal everything he had worked for and frame him for their crimes. But Michael Harrison hadn't built a successful cybersecurity company by giving up when faced with complex problems. As the initial shock and heartbreak gave way to cold fury, Michael began to plan the most important project of his life, not just protecting himself from their scheme, but ensuring that Sarah and David faced consequences that matched the scope of their betrayal. Michael's revenge would be methodical, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating. But first, he needed to protect himself and gather more evidence while appearing completely unaware of their plans. Over the next 6 weeks, Michael became an Oscar-worthy actor. He continued his normal routines, attended family dinners, collaborated with David on business projects, and showed no sign that he knew anything about their betrayal. Meanwhile, he was documenting everything, copying files, securing assets, and building an ironclad case against both conspirators. Michael installed hidden cameras and recording devices throughout his house and office, capturing conversations between Sarah and David when they thought he wasn't around. He hired forensic accountants to trace David's embezzlement and create a complete financial picture of the theft. He worked with cybersecurity experts to document David's sharing of confidential information and sabotage of client relationships. Most importantly, Michael began implementing a plan to turn their own scheme against them. He started making copies of all business records, securing intellectual property rights, and quietly transferring key assets to protect them from seizure. He also began building relationships with law enforcement officials and prosecutors who specialized in white-collar crime. The trap Michael set was beautiful in its simplicity. He created an opportunity for David and Sarah to execute their plan while ensuring they would be caught red-handed with overwhelming evidence of their conspiracy. Michael arranged for a major client presentation that would require David to access the most sensitive company information. He made sure David knew that this contract could be worth over $5 million and was crucial to the company's future. He also made sure that David's access to this information would be thoroughly documented and monitored. At the same time, Michael began exhibiting signs of stress and overwork, not difficult given what he was dealing with, that Sarah could document as evidence of his supposed mental instability. He made sure these incidents were captured on his hidden cameras, showing that Sarah was deliberately provoking situations she could later use against him. The climax came in late May, when David and Sarah decided the time was right to execute their plan. David scheduled a meeting with Sentinel's biggest investors, planning to present evidence of Michael's embezzlement and mental instability while positioning himself as the company's salvation. Sarah simultaneously filed for divorce and temporary custody of the children, claiming that Michael was mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. Her filing included months of documented incidents and a psychiatric evaluation claiming that Michael was suffering from severe stress-related disorders. But Michael was ready for them. The night before David's investor meeting and Sarah's divorce filing, Michael struck back with overwhelming force. He presented law enforcement with complete evidence of David's embezzlement, including forensic accounting that showed exactly how $2.3 million had been stolen and where it had gone. He provided prosecutors with recordings of David sharing confidential information with competitors and evidence of deliberate sabotage of client relationships. Simultaneously, Michael presented divorce court with evidence of Sarah's adultery, her conspiracy to defraud him, and recordings proving that her claims about his mental health were fabricated as part of a scheme to steal his assets and children. The recordings were particularly damaging. In one conversation, Sarah and David discussed how to drive Michael crazy, so their claims about his mental health would be believable. In another, David laughed about how easy it had been to steal from his trusting best friend while sleeping with his wife. The evidence was so overwhelming that both David and Sarah were arrested within 48 hours. David was charged with embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy, and violation of fiduciary duty. Sarah was charged as a co-conspirator in the embezzlement scheme and with perjury for her false statements in divorce proceedings. But Michael's revenge was just beginning. The criminal charges were only the first phase of his plan. Michael had anticipated that David and Sarah would try to claim the stolen money was hidden or spent, making recovery difficult. So he had traced every dollar of the embezzlement to its final destination. David had been using the stolen money to fund his affair with Sarah, luxury trips, expensive gifts, and even a secret apartment where they conducted their relationship. Michael's forensic accountants had documented that David had also been using stolen funds to pay for Sarah's expensive lifestyle, designer clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, and other luxuries that Michael had assumed were coming from their legitimate household budget. This evidence allowed Michael to pursue civil asset forfeiture, seizing David's luxury cars, his boat, his expensive watch collection, and other assets purchased with stolen money. Sarah lost her jewelry, designer wardrobe, and other items that had been purchased with funds from David's embezzlement. The business consequences were equally devastating. Once David's embezzlement and sabotage became known, Sentinel's investors demanded his immediate removal and supported Michael's efforts to rebuild the company. Several clients that David had been secretly working with competitors dropped those relationships and renewed their contracts with Sentinel. Michael was able to demonstrate that the company's recent problems had been caused entirely by David's sabotage, leading to renewed confidence from investors and clients. Within 6 months, Sentinel was more profitable than ever, and Michael had offers to sell the company for over $15 million. The personal consequences for Sarah and David were devastating in ways that prison sentences couldn't capture. Their affair became public knowledge through court filings and media coverage, destroying both their reputations in Denver's tight-knit business and social communities. Sarah lost custody of Emma and Jake when the court saw evidence of her conspiracy against their father. The children, who were old enough to understand what their mother had done, chose to live with Michael and wanted minimal contact with Sarah. The family that Sarah had been willing to destroy for her affair was lost to her permanently. David's arrest and conviction destroyed his reputation in the business community. Other companies began investigating their relationships with him, discovering additional instances of unethical behavior and fraud. He was banned from serving as an officer or director of any public company and faced lawsuits from multiple former clients. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. With evidence of Sarah's adultery and conspiracy, she received minimal assets and no alimony. The prenuptial agreement she had once laughed about as unnecessary became the legal framework that left her with almost nothing from their 16-year marriage. But Michael's most satisfying revenge was professional success. Within 2 years, he had rebuilt Sentinel into an even stronger company, expanded into new markets, and established himself as one of Colorado's most successful entrepreneurs. He was featured in business magazines as an example of resilience and ethical leadership, while David's mugshot appeared in articles about corporate fraud. Michael also used his experience to help other business owners protect themselves from partnership fraud and internal theft. He developed new cybersecurity protocols specifically designed to detect and prevent the kind of financial crimes David had committed, turning his painful experience into a service that helped others avoid similar betrayals. The legal proceedings took 3 years to fully resolve. David was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution plus penalties and interest totaling over $4 million. Sarah received 3 years probation and a suspended sentence contingent on her cooperation with prosecutors and payment of her portion of the restitution. The civil lawsuits that Michael filed resulted in additional damages of over $6 million, representing lost business opportunities, reputational damage, and emotional distress. David's assets, including his mansion and business interests, were seized to pay the judgments. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of Michael's revenge was watching David and Sarah's relationship collapse under the pressure of their legal troubles. Without Michael's money to fund their lifestyle and facing the reality of prison time, their great love quickly turned into mutual blame and recrimination. Sarah testified against David to reduce her own sentence, providing prosecutors with additional evidence of his financial crimes and manipulation. David, in turn, revealed details of Sarah's active participation in planning the conspiracy and her role in attempting to frame Michael for embezzlement. Their betrayal of each other in court was almost as satisfying to Michael as their original betrayal had been painful. The love affair that had cost them everything ended with each of them trying to destroy the other to save themselves. Emma and Jake, now 17 and 15, have thrived under their father's care and have developed a mature understanding of what happened to their family. They maintain minimal contact with their mother and have no relationship with David, whom they now see as the man who destroyed their family and tried to frame their father for crimes he committed. Michael has since remarried to Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a forensic psychologist who helped him process the trauma of betrayal and rebuild his ability to trust. Jennifer brings her own children to their blended family, and Michael has found happiness that is deeper and more authentic than what he had before. The new Michael is more cautious but also more confident. He has implemented business practices that make embezzlement virtually impossible and has built a network of advisors who help him make major decisions. He has turned his analytical skills toward protecting others from the kind of betrayal he experienced. David served his full 8-year sentence and was released in 2031 to a world where his reputation made finding employment virtually impossible. He works in a warehouse, lives in a small apartment, and will be paying restitution to Michael for the rest of his life. The charming entrepreneur who once lived in a mansion now struggles to pay basic bills while knowing that his former best friend has become one of Colorado's most successful businessmen. Sarah works as a retail clerk and lives in a modest apartment, having never recovered financially or socially from her role in the conspiracy. Her relationship with her children remains strained, and she has been unable to rebuild the social connections that were destroyed when her betrayal became public knowledge. She occasionally sees news articles about Michael's continued success and knows that the life she threw away for an affair with David was more valuable than anything she gained. The moral lessons from this devastating tale of betrayal and revenge resonate on multiple levels. First, the importance of verification and documentation in both business and personal relationships cannot be overstated. Michael's methodical approach to gathering evidence saved him from being framed and enabled him to achieve complete justice. Second, the story demonstrates that comprehensive betrayal often requires comprehensive consequences. Half measures would not have been sufficient to address the scope of David and Sarah's conspiracy or to prevent them from attempting similar schemes in the future. Third, the power of patience and strategic thinking in dealing with betrayal is remarkable. Michael's ability to continue acting normally while building his case allowed him to gather evidence that would have been impossible to obtain if he had confronted his betrayers immediately. Fourth, the story shows how betrayers often create the very evidence needed to convict them. David and Sarah's confidence in their scheme led them to document their conspiracy in ways that made prosecution straightforward. Finally, the tale illustrates that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting justice take its course while building a better life. Michael's professional success and personal happiness provide ongoing satisfaction that far exceeds any temporary pleasure he might have gained from petty revenge. Today, Michael Harrison is recognized as one of Colorado's most successful entrepreneurs and a leader in corporate fraud prevention. His story has become a case study in business schools and law enforcement training programs, demonstrating how systematic betrayal can be detected, documented, and prosecuted effectively. Sentinel Cybersecurity Solutions continues to thrive under Michael's leadership, now employing over 200 people and protecting major corporations from cyber threats. The company's success stands as a testament to the power of ethical leadership and the rewards of building something meaningful rather than simply taking from others. And somewhere in their modest circumstances, David and Sarah probably still wonder how their perfect plan to destroy Michael ended up destroying them instead. The answer, of course, is that they underestimated the man they thought they knew so well, forgetting that the same analytical skills and methodical approach that built a successful company could be equally effective when applied to the most important project of his life, ensuring that justice was served completely and permanently. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply allowing people to experience the full consequences of their choices while building something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy.